Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our fifth seminar for this year's series of the Sunoikisis Digital Culture Heritage. And our topic today is how digital tools can be used for public engagement. And we have a special focus on how digital means can really empower the audience to become, let's say, more involved, more let's say less passive in the consumption of the culture heritage, how they can not only consume digital products but also produce digital products about the culture heritage, and how this process of creating content through digital means can maybe strengthen also the relationship between the audience and the cultural artifacts. But I will now let Emma Bridges, that is our Public Engagement Fellow at the ICS in London, introduce the topic for us, and then we will have contribution from Humphrey Southall that will talk about the GB 1900 project, and Elisa Bonacini that will tell us everything about easy travel. I am now going to present you to everyone, Emma, and you should unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks Valeria. I'm going to turn my camera off now that I've said hello and share my screen. Is that working, Valeria?
Yes, perfect.
Brilliant. Okay, so I thought I'd start by talking a little bit about what we mean by public engagement before I share some thoughts on how digital methods can help us with this through what is sometimes called crowdsourcing. And then I'll talk specifically about some of the ways in which Wikipedia can be used as a method for engaging various publics, as well as thinking about some of the issues relating to Wikipedia, who edits it, the ways in which this affects the representation of some of the subjects it covers. And I'll finish up by giving you a brief insight into one project, the Women's Classical Committee UK Wikipedia project, also known as WCC Wiki, with which I'm involved, that's aiming to address some of those issues. So what do we mean by public engagement? You might well have heard different terms used for this depending on where in the world you're based. In some places it's referred to as public scholarship, for example. You might also hear terms like knowledge exchange or outreach being used. And sometimes there's an overlap between what we mean by those things and public engagement. You'll probably hear lots of different definitions of public engagement, but I thought it'd be quite useful to have a look at how the UK's National Coordinating Centre for Public Engagement defines it. They see it as describing the myriad ways in which the activity and benefits of higher education and research can be shared with the public. It's by definition a two-way process involving interaction and listening with the goal of generating mutual benefit. Now, if after this talk you're interested to know more about public engagement, particularly in a UK context, it's definitely worth having a look at the NCCP's website, which I've given the link to here. There are lots and lots of case studies there, details about what we mean by public engagement, and lots of other resources if it's something you're interested in following up. So crucially, engagement's about sharing with wider publics some of the work that goes on in universities, especially in relation to academic research. You'll notice too that here I've highlighted the phrases two-way process and mutual benefit. It's not just a case of passing on information about academic research. It's a process instead that involves both academics and publics, all sorts of different publics, in conversations and processes that work for the benefit of everybody involved. The goal might be about sharing knowledge, but it can also bring about lots of other kinds of benefits, like the development of new skills, the fostering of communities, or changes in behaviour and ideas. So let's think about what we might mean by crowdsourcing, how that relates to public engagement, and how digital technologies can be helpful here. So as you might already be aware, crowdsourcing is a method that can use the internet as a way of gathering inputs from a large number of people. You might also have heard it referred to as citizen science. It might involve inviting people to contribute knowledge or to use particular skills they have, or maybe even training them to develop some of those skills which are necessary for helping with a project. and making use of the power of the crowd as well as their time and their labour to work towards some kind of common goal. In most cases, this works on the assumption that people will contribute voluntarily without monetary payment. So that's where the sense of mutual benefit becomes important. Contributors to projects might often be motivated by a kind of altruistic desire to contribute to the sum of human understanding, but they might also gain other benefits along the way, things like new skills, new knowledge of their own, a sense of achievement or enjoyment, or the feeling of being part of a wider community, which in many cases is a global community. And there are certain types of projects for which this model works particularly well. So, for example, there are many examples of projects that involve asking people to transcribe or translate archival material, to tag or analyse images or data where computer algorithms can't be as accurate as a human eye, or to contribute pictures or information. If this is something that you're interested in, I'll pass the slides on to Valeria after the session, and I've linked there to Wikipedia's list of crowdsourcing projects, which is quite a long and detailed list, so it's worth having a browse through that. And I've also linked there to Zooniverse, which is worth having a look at if you're not already familiar with it. You'll find there a collection of various different projects of the types I've described, covering a whole range of humanities, arts and science disciplines. They say they've currently got something like over 1 million registered volunteers, and Zooniverse described itself as a platform for what they call people-powered research, and a place where projects set up by professional researchers draw on the power of the crowd to make them happen. And current projects that you'll find there include all sorts of things, for example, everything from helping to classify galaxies, describing documents from the time of Shakespeare, and taking photos of tropical rainforest flowers. So, how does Wikipedia relate to this idea of sharing expertise and knowledge via crowdsourcing? You've probably heard it said before that Wikipedia is the world's largest source of freely available knowledge, and it's true that it operates on simply a vast scale. English language Wikipedia currently has more than 5.7 million articles. There are around 600 new articles created every day, and on average over 10 edits are made every second. In what follows, I'm going to be talking mainly about the English language Wikipedia because that's the site I'm used to working with. But of course, there are Wikipedia sites in other languages. I think in total 293 languages, with a total of over 40 million articles. So as a crowdsourcing model, it's got several advantages. It's free to use. It's really easy to learn how to edit. You don't need any prior knowledge of coding. It's very, very quick to make corrections or adjustments. And anyone with access to the internet can use it and edit it. But of course, we do need to bear in mind there that there are still significant portions of the world who don't have internet access. So that does end up meaning that the global north, for example, is far better represented than the global south in terms of the editing population of Wikipedia. And it's also worth reminding ourselves that censorship of Wikipedia still exists in several countries. So why might it be important for academics, researchers and students to engage with Wikipedia as a means of accessing and sharing knowledge and information? If you think about how often you carry out an internet search and the first result you see is a page of Wikipedia. Now, if you're looking for information relating to academic work, you might scroll past that result because you're looking for something more specialised. Or, like I do, you might actually sometimes find that it's useful to be a first port of call to get a brief overview of a new topic. Then think about how many people never have any need to look beyond that first result in their search, and consider how influential that can make Wikipedia as a source of information. So if the information there is inaccurate, out of date, if it's got gaps, if it's biased, readers can very, very quickly get an incomplete or misleading impression of the topic they're interested in. So I feel that researchers and academics have a responsibility here to get involved in editing pages which relate to their own areas of expertise in order to help ensure accurate coverage. Importantly too, representation on Wikipedia can be a really powerful way of improving the visibility of particular topics or groups, and that's something I'll say a little bit more about later. So I guess here, in terms of talking about publics and engagement, we're talking about a whole series of different types of publics, and I think we can include students and academics within those publics, because it's very much a multi-way process. It's not just about sending knowledge one way, but it's about all sharing in that process of knowledge creation in relation to cultural heritage. It used to be the case that lecturers and teachers would tell their students to ignore Wikipedia because anyone can contribute and they can say anything they like. Now, from conversations that I still have, I sometimes suspect that some people still do say that, but in reality, it's really important to acknowledge that Wikipedia has moved on a lot from its earliest incarnations, and it's incredibly heavily invested in ensuring that the information it shares is reliable and traceable. So one of the first rules for editing Wikipedia, which might run counter to the instincts and training of researchers and scholars, is that it's not a place for sharing original research. What this means is that every entry should be fully referenced with citations relating to information that's been published elsewhere in reliable sources. Those sources can be online or in print, but a good Wikipedia entry will have a full bibliography and references, and every statement or sentence should be backed up with a reference to its source. Articles should also try and represent a neutral point of view, that is, representing fairly and as far as possible without bias all significant views that have been published by reliable sources on a topic. Again, that's something that doesn't always come naturally to academic writers when we might have to make a case for taking a particular stance on an issue. Articles will be flagged by other editors if they don't address these criteria. So, for example, hang on a sec, sorry. This is an example of a page, if you can see that, which has been identified by the Women's Classical Committee Editing Project as needing work. You'll see this text box at the top identifying the fact that this page needs further citations to meet Wikipedia standards. And actually, if you scroll down this page, you can see we've got the occasional kind of footnote here giving a reference, but actually the vast majority of the text here doesn't have any references at all. So you might look at that and think, well, I can go and find where those sources are for that information. I can improve this page by adding some citations and references. You might well come across pages like this when you're browsing in relation to a topic with which you're particularly familiar. And you could therefore add in references to the sources that you know of in order to make the article more comprehensive. I think that's just one really important way in which those of us who do have access to university libraries and online journals and so on can use that access to help improve the encyclopedia. So the vast majority of people who work to improve Wikipedia are volunteers. It really is crowdsourcing on a grand scale, and it does illustrate the power of harnessing the public's time and knowledge. But it still remains true that almost anyone can edit Wikipedia, but not everyone does. This produces some particular issues in terms of how things are represented and who and what's represented. Wikipedia have analysed the dominant social and cultural characteristics of the people who edit Wikipedia, and that can lead to imbalanced coverage of some subjects and perspectives. So they currently have this definition of the average Wikipedian, and you'll see the average Wikipedian on the English Wikipedia is usually male, usually formally educated, age 15 to 49, from a developed nation, and so on. So all of these factors can lead to bias in relation to things like gender, race, social class, and a tendency to underrepresent the perspectives of people who have neither access to the internet or time to edit Wikipedia. So the project in which I've been involved for the past couple of years is run by a group of us from the UK Women's Classical Committee, and it aims to take steps towards tackling the gender imbalance where the representation of women classicists is concerned. We use the hashtag WCCWiki to tweet about what we're doing, and we also have a project page where we keep a list of pages we've identified as needing creation or improvement. I'll show you that in a moment, as well as keeping track of progress, sharing news of events, and supplying information on useful resources. You'll also find guidance on editing there if you've not done so before. So what's WCCWiki trying to do? The most recent statistics suggest that only around 18% of biographies on English language Wikipedia are of women. And that's a small percentage of just over 1.5 million biographies in total. The There's a gender bias also in the content of some of these biographies and the ways in which women are written about. So women sometimes get overlooked in narratives, or references to notable women are made only in relation to their husbands or other male relatives rather than in their own right. Often we still find things like man being used as the default description of humans. Women aren't always given their official roles, things like, you know, roles as committee or founders, but they're just described simply as the women. And there's also been research which suggests that published work written by women is far less likely to be cited on Wikipedia than work written by men. So tackling those kinds of issues of systemic bias can involve correcting those oversights, as well as working to create more biographies of women. So WCC Wiki is one of several initiatives which are working to address some of these issues. Wikipedia's got a wider initiative called Women in Red, which aims to turn the red links, those for subjects which don't have a page yet, into live blue links. Our project's got a particular focus on the representation of notable women classicists. So far, we've created around 80 new pages and improved lots more by adding more details, citations, bibliographies and images to improve the visibility of women classicists. But we do still have a long way to go. Just before I finish, I'd like to give you a quick tour of the page, just to show you what to expect if you take a look at it. So here we are. So if you search for our project page on Wikipedia, you'll see we've got details here of the work that we've done so far and things that we're aiming to do. So in particular, we have on our welcome page a long list of articles that we have worked to improve or create in the first place. But you'll also see, if you browse our AIMEST page, that we have an even longer list of to-dos, which are pages, initially pages which need some improvement, but also further down the page, a very, very long list of red links. These are women we've identified as meeting Wikipedia's notability criteria, and primarily they're usually professors who haven't yet got a page. So if you're interested in getting involved, feel free to choose a page and make a start on it, or make some improvements on one of the others on our list. We also have a page of resources which kind of help you with editing and link to information about some of the women whose pages we're working on. So finally, just to say that if you are interested in getting involved, do have a look at those project pages. I've given details on the slide, which, as I say, Valeria will share later, as how to find us. Look for us on Twitter via WCC Wiki, or follow me or Women in Classics, or you can look at the WCC online and see what else we're up to. But thank you for listening, and I'll hand it back to Valeria.
Thank you very much, Emma, and I will probably call you again towards the end, maybe to give a few words of advice to the students that will have to create a new page on Wikipedia, or existing or editing an existing one as part of the exercise. So I will ask you to give, some pieces of advice.
Okay.
I'm now giving the floor to Humphrey. I am now presenting you to everyone, Humphrey, and we...
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, very well.
Right, I'm now going to share my screen. So let's just hope it goes. Hang on. What is it? Sorry, I'm having a slight problem at... Or maybe, let's see if I maybe got... Sorry, I've not done this before. Maybe I actually have screen sharing running.
There should be a green button in the top left-hand corner of your Hangouts window.
Yeah.
Let's share screen.
Yeah, no, I've got the button. Just a second. I'm trying to get to my PowerPoint presentation.
So we're still seeing you through your webcam.
Yep. Right. Can you see? Right. Okay. Oh dear. Sorry, we did practice this earlier, but let's go. Sorry, would it be an idea if the other speaker goes next while I try to sort this out? Sorry, I've got the screen share button, but it's not working.
Valeria, you make a call on this. Valeria, if you're saying anything, you're still muted.
Elisa, would you like to go instead of Humphrey?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm presenting you now. We'll go back to you in a little bit, Humphrey. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this, but
no problems.
I'm going to show my screen, and please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see it. All right.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation to this talking, Valeria. So I will talk about the digital participatory tools for public engagement with cultural heritage. And I will present here a case study on It's a Trouble, named It's a Trouble Sicilia.
So sorry to interrupt you, Lisa. If you click on Nascondi, we get rid of the ugly banner there. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Did you see my? Because I can't see nothing now. Of my presentation.
Okay. No. Redo.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm here. Okay.
Great. That's perfect.
Sorry, it's the first time also for me with Hangout. Digital technologies have proven their innovative role in the cultural and tourist domain by offering information inequality. Scholars agree on the importance of the role of community-based and participatory initiatives in enhancing local culture and attraction. Here, two communication aspects will be important in the next future, and there are user involvement and knowledge sharing. Specifically, digital storytelling and participatory and crowdsourcing culture are the most recent trends in communication, dissemination, democratization of cultural contents and languages to be used. Technological application have made sure that public engagement through a participatory approach in the cultural heritage domain became a great trend, proving its power, especially thanks to the success of social media. Digital tools allow works of art and historical landmarks to tell the stories that lie beneath them, enhancing their emotional and evocative side. This is a new approach to view and communicate heritage by creating new cultural experiences for end users. And using visual digital contents, story-centric narratives are useful to understand both cultural heritage and the human experience, which stays beyond historical processes and monuments. Talking about innovative tools for tourism and culture promotion, we are going to present here It's a Travel web platform and app, as used in a pilot project in Sicily. Launched in 2013, It's a Travel is a global free storytelling platform to create museum audio guides and audio tours for cities and territories based on democratization of cultural contents and languages, born with the aim to help organizations in the heritage and tourism sectors to create their own audio guides and to bring their stories to life. It could be considered as a mix of Facebook, Wikipedia, and TripAdvisor. It is based on participatory culture, creativity, and storytelling. And thanks to its gratuity, both from the contents producer side and from the user side, It's a Travel is also a digital key tool. It offers institutions the opportunity to upload and manage self-generated content to enhance on-site visits or to facilitate itinerary planning and any further studies. In this way, it plays a great key role in democratization and promotion of culture and territories through storytelling, allowing people to discover culture and tourist places via the web platform, and also via the free general app that is available from the main app stores. So all the audio guides can be viewed remotely on the screens of users' computers via the web platform through the Explore menu, searching by countries and cities. And on the mobile phone via the Easy app, or by scanning the QR codes in situ. Every single audio guide, audio tour could be downloaded on the user download section of the Easy app and then enjoyed in offline mode. Easy Travel aims, by one side, to connect cities, museums and their stories with people and travelers who wanted to explore the world in a brand new, innovative way. And by the other side, to make exploring museums and cities even more inspiring and enriching for visitors and travelers alike. With about 4,500 million usage per month, 54 languages, 99 countries, about 2,200 destinations, a total of 9,500 audio guides, about 6,800 city tours, and 2,200 museum guides, and 30 million interactions per year, and a great amount, really great amount of data available to all, Easy Travel is now the most popular free platform for museums and itineraries audio guides in the world. As you can see here, cities like Amsterdam has yet many tourist attractions on Easy Travel, or Moscow, for example, where every corner of every street can tell stories. So once registered through the CMS, the Content Management System interface, Easy Travel offers everyone the chance to easily create a multimedia audio guide, whose text content is also available in audio mode, with photo galleries and videos, which could also be transformed into an hypertextual guide with the addition of links. With a single profile, the content provider can produce and manage all the audio guides he wants, without limits in numbers or resources uploaded. Intellectual and data property rights remain with the content provider. Easy Travel is only concerned with providing its CMS. So, launched as Easy Travel Sicilia on May 2016, the project I'm going to show you aimed at encouraging tourists to enjoy the territory and its cultural resources, making tourism experience better overall through storytelling by native people such as students and scholars. Thanks to a general agreement with the Regional Department of Cultural Heritage and Sicilian Identity, the research project was financed by a grant from its travelist itself, aimed to fill the gap in communication and cultural and tourist promotion that Sicily had been suffering from a chronic lack of strategic management of cultural heritage at local level, by creating cities audio tours and museum audio guides under a singular regional level management, coordination and support made by me. On May 2016, there were only 7 guides. Right from the beginning of the project, the number of stakeholders and storytellers to be engaged was enlarged, involving all those heritage communities that wanted to join the project, such as also the Regional Department for Tourism and Performing Arts, many municipalities, museums, school projects, museum networks, cultural institutions in general, local tour operators, the universities of Catania and Palermo, and some dioceses and churches. A network of storytellers was created, embracing the common idea to promote culture and territories through a bottom-up, disseminated and participated process, as the Faro Convention requires, to guarantee the common right to cultural heritage. This project was soon transformed into a spontaneous participatory process. About 3,000 people were involved, becoming storytellers of their own heritage, from primary school children to high school and university students, and to the museum managers themselves. Many of them were co-creators of digital contents, such as photos, videos, and audios. And in this way, local heritage communities were involved in actively contributing to make smart their own cultural heritage and territories. The storytelling approach adopted for Easy Travel Sicilia has been aimed at involving a real production process based on a deep reworking of knowledge and a scientific way of telling. An appealing, descriptive, and simple narrative style was created, with the very first purpose to make both the contents and the stories as attractive as possible. After 2 years, the audio guides created in Sicily are 185. Specifically, 86 museums or cultural sites audio guides, 4 temporary exhibitions, 95 cities and territorial audio tours. More than 1,600 points of interest have been geolocated in the audio tours, and the objects of artwork schedules exhibited in the museums are over 3,000. We've just said that this project involved about 3,000 people who represent the heritage communities cited by the Faro Convention. So this project could be recognized as a best practice of cultural content and values co-creation, joining people in smart heritage communities. And people joining the project realized both the right to be part of common cultural heritage and the responsibility in contributing to the digital and creative promotion of their territory, to support the development of culture and tourism, thus demonstrating how creative involvement is the key today to create sustainable processes. Some educational digital projects were conducted with primary school classes, for example, such as the 3 audio guides made for the archaeological park of Selinunte and Cusa quarries. Here, students of 66 classes from Castelvetrano, that is near Trapani, worked for this project for a total of about 9,000 children, tutored by over 50 teachers. Posing as Greek children from Selinunte, 66 students gave different voices to each story. Among these voices, there is the one of a student who, while suffering from selective mutism, for which she neither reads nor speaks in the classroom, nevertheless spoke at home, giving the project also great inclusive meaning. To give an example, here are the statistics we have from the CMS Sicilian profiles. The results of the case in terms of contents visualization, downloading, and online use of published audio guides, both from tourists and Sicilian people, and even in terms of feedbacks on the high usefulness of these digital tools to discover and enjoy local cultural heritage, lead to the following proposition. The applications of ECTs and open platforms in the promotion of cultural heritage is positively related to the tourist attractiveness of the area and to the quality of the tourist experience in the enjoyment of culture. Proposition 2, the adoption of simple, creative, and appealing narrative techniques for cultural contents is related both to the wide participation of local actors to the content's co-creation and to their appreciation by users. And 3, the creation of open digital platforms for cultural contents co-creation based on free and spontaneous participation of different local actors and on the recognition of each one's contribution is related to the development of social cohesion and sense of belonging to the territory. We can assume that this project contributes to develop knowledge about innovative tools for the local promotion of the territory. It highlights the importance in stimulating people's emotional and creative involvement in the co-creation of app contents. Finally, it highlights the strategic importance of innovative tools in promoting cultural heritage and offers insights to policymakers for defining territorial promotion strategies through coordinating and active involving local people and tourists, so revealing a serious impact on civil society made by this platform. Finally, here is the founder of Easy Travel himself, Alex Tursky, talking about our project success during an international conference. And this made me really proud of our work in Sicily. If I had a little more time, I want you to show. This is the travel platform, and you can see that is in many languages. You can do two things here: explore the contents or create your contents. If you want to see the project in Sicily, you can search Sicily from the Italy section from this part, or you can also search in this way, and you will see all the audio guides and audio tours that are on the platform, loading more every contents. There is, I want you to show only an example of how we are using this platform. For the audio guide of the Regional Archaeological Museum Paolo Orsi in Syracuse. This is one of the most important of the southern Italy. I hope it's going. Okay. And we here, every archaeologist of the museum spoke the contents, so you can find many work of art inside the this audio guide. It's like an online collection of the museum, but you can also see that there are many links inside the audio guide. For example, this one I will show you. Or, for example, if you go in this section, we linked some pieces of art to, in this case, for example, this one, to other pages in, for example, Wikipedia, and at the end, a 3D model that you can see of the 26 piece of art on Sketchfab that you can see directly from the platform, also from the app. The very first link I showed you is another project on Google with some maps inside and some pieces that you can see in 360 degrees. And so we are using Easy Travel as a unique content of many projects and many contents on the web. So I think it's enough for me. And I'm finished.
Thank you very much, Elisa. That was really brilliant. I'm a big fan of your work, as you know, and I will definitely have questions for you later. I don't see Humphrey online. Let's hope that he does come back soon, so that, well, actually maybe we can we can have a bit of Q&A now. So I wanted to among the very interesting things that you both Elisa and Emma said about participatory digital tools. I really like the idea that they not only enable participation and can enhance the interest, but they also make people more, let's say, responsible for their own culture heritage. And I think that this is something that citizen science has also proved, that the more people are involved about the cultural heritage, the more they will be protecting it and taking care of it. And I think this is another interesting, additional benefits of having the public as co-creator and let's say, digital curator of cultural heritage. Okay, I think that Humphrey might be experiencing some technical issues. So can I ask you, Emma, now maybe, oh, I see Humphrey now.
Right, I've been having some very strange problems.
Yes. Humphrey, I have your slides. Because
yeah, it keeps turning so that every click is a right click. But am I ready to talk now?
Yes, if you.
Okay, because I've just been out of the thing completely for some time. I'm really sorry about this. I don't understand what's going wrong, but shall I see if I can share my slides now?
Yes, if you cannot, I can show you slides on the screen. And
well, let's just.
Okay, I think that the screen sharing is actually working now.
Is that okay? Can you see that?
That's perfect. That's amazing.
Oh dear. I thought I was going to have to give up. Okay, well, I'm talking about a project called GB 1900, which is a project we finished this summer. And in a way, the project began in 2011. And it's a project to build a gazetteer. I won't say all that much about the first couple of slides, but as Valeria knows, we need gazetteers to find out where places are, where they were. We want to know what they were called in the past. And there's a good argument the best source of building historical gazetteers is to find all the names on old maps. So the purpose of this project was to create a new historical gazetteer of Britain. And what this slide covers is some of the alternatives that currently exist. There is a big data set from the Ordnance Survey, which initially sounds very attractive, but it turns out that most of it is simply postcodes. And there is also a resource which isn't in fact mainly crowdsourced called GeoNames, which is a very big, but in fact only contains about 60,000 entries from the UK. There is also a project called the Survey of English Place Names, which created a website called placenames.org, although that seems to have disappeared, which has over 4 million place name forms, but it only doesn't contain many coordinates for these names, so it doesn't really work as a gazetteer. And also, well, firstly, in fact, it's limited to England, which is, as you're about to hear, is very relevant. It also contains nothing for 7 counties. Another 8 counties are incomplete, which is remarkable given this project in fact started in 1923. And the map you can now see is a map showing more or less current progress. And this is based on individual academics, many of them actually funded by the Survey of English Place Names, doing very, very detailed place name research. However, the first stage of that research always has been to gather all the names that appear on the first available 6-inch to 1 mile map. So that's a pretty detailed map, roughly 1 to 10,000. Now, in 2011, I was invited to a meeting in Aberystwyth, whose purpose was to discuss how best to create a place name gazetteer of Wales broadly comparable to this English survey. But the obvious requirement was that given that had been running since 1923 and was not complete, that we needed to come up with a method which would produce something useful rather quicker. And that led to me suggesting to the meeting that we base the approach on crowdsourcing. And that led to a project called Cymru 1900. Sorry, this slide wasn't prepared for this seminar. And Cymru 1900 was a fairly small project funded by the Welsh government to gather all the place names on the 6-inch to mile maps of Wales. They obtained about £30,000 from the Welsh government, they being particularly the National Library of Wales and the Royal Commission on Ancient and Historic Monuments of Wales. And they got the Zooniverse team, who've already been mentioned, to actually write some software. They already had a complete set of scanned images of all of these maps, and the maps were georeferenced, which meant that we knew the real world coordinates of them. And that led to this system here, which is the Cymru 1900 system. As you can see, there's a map in the background, and it's a georeference map, so we actually know the real world coordinates of any point on that map. There are, and what you can see, there are some grey symbols, and there's also a dialog box. So basically the idea was you would click on a name on the map like Porth Dinlane, and this dialog box would pop up and you could type in the name you saw on the map. Note that the grey symbol would only appear once you'd done that. So that was Cymru 1900. The project launched in 2013, and well, it never quite finished. In 2015, while that project was still running, we realised that because the National Library of Scotland had independently computerised all of these maps, because the Welsh project was based on maps coming from a commercial company, we realised at a very low cost, we could take the software already created by the Welsh project and make it work with the maps from the National Library of Scotland. That was GB 1900, and we launched in September 2016. We closed down at the end of January this year. And in creating that new project, we did somewhat tweak the software. So that is the GB 1900 interface. It's pointing at exactly the same map, but you'll see very profound technical change here. Instead of having grey pins, they're coloured pins. And this is a crowdsourcing project, it's a citizen science project, so we had to motivate volunteers to work on it. And what we wanted for accuracy was that each name should be transcribed twice by two different people to get a matching string. And if you didn't get matching strings, then you need a third person. And this graph, which I'm going to talk about for rather longer, looks at the experience of both the GB 1900 project and the earlier Cymru 1900 project. It's a little bit complicated, but the Cymru 1900 lines are in grey, while the GB 1900 lines are black. And what this is showing for each week, the number of new transcriptions and also confirmations. As I said, we wanted the volunteers to do not just do the names once, but for a second volunteer to come along and confirm. The problem with GB 1900 was of Cymru 1900 was the interface didn't really encourage people to do the confirmations. So even after 2 years after the launch of the Welsh project, very few of the names had ever been confirmed. So firstly, we needed to recruit volunteers. And one of the mysteries of this project, in fact, is where did the volunteers really come from? Because our launch publicity was pretty much a disaster. We put out a press release. I did get interviewed on Radio Sheffield, and the nature of the project meant that we could show conclusively this was a total failure because nobody did any work in the Sheffield area for months after that broadcast. But we did manage to recruit about 1,000 volunteers, and things picked up quite rapidly. And as you can see for both projects, look at both of the solid lines, the solid black and the light grey line, you'll see there's a rapid rise from the launch. And then, but with the Welsh project, the amount of activity declined after about 20 weeks and then moves along at a very low level. Whereas with the GB 1900 project, we managed to sustain it. And that was through a variety of activities. So, but this graph shows the proportion of all the work done by different numbers of contributors. And what it's basically showing, or something slightly odd is happening with it, but what it basically shows remember there are about 1,000 volunteers in total. It's showing that something like 99% of all transcriptions were done by the top 200 of those transcribers. But it also shows that 80% of all the transcriptions were done by the top 50. So that while we were certainly going for engagement, an awful lot of this is about finding people who become very engaged indeed. And one part of the project, and I think I'm probably nearing the end of this, but I can take questions later, is that we did do some follow-up interviews with some of those people who'd done the most. We contacted, I think, all of the top 15 contributors and ended up doing telephone interviews with 6 of them. This is one example. And we also had from the system very detailed information about exactly what they'd done. So that what that map is showing is where in Britain Mr. A's transcriptions were. And this is looking just at the first few weeks of his contributions, and the darker, the earlier. And what you can probably see is there's a strong concentration of dark colour in Lancashire. And when we interviewed him, that became clear that this related very much to family connections. As he says there, he himself lives in Liverpool, but he was born in Wigan, and he's got an extended family extending throughout different parts of Lancashire. And in fact, he started off as what he thought of as his ancestral home around Darwin in northeast Lancashire. There's another small cluster in Scotland, which doesn't, this map only shows his initial weeks, but if you go a bit further forward, you'd see he'd done some in a particular area of the west coast of Scotland. And again, this related to personal engagement. We've written a paper about this, but the central point we make is that in quote, classic citizen science projects like Galaxy Zoo, people give their main motivation as being to contribute to science in a fairly abstract kind of way. But what we found with this project, because it was to do with maps and to do with places, people were engaging with maps with places that had particular meaning for them. And they also talked a lot about just the pleasure of looking at the old maps. So that's the presentation. I'm sorry that was slightly disorganized, reflecting the earlier problems getting the presentation done at all. But do people have any questions? And I'll now try to make myself visible again.
Thank you, Humphrey. Thank you for your presentation. I was at the launch event that you organized a few months ago, and I did have the chance to talk with your volunteers, and they were indeed very, very happy to talk about their own places, and they were very keen on showing me on any map where they were born and where their old houses used to be, and I found that really, really interesting, and you could really feel the emotional attachment they had to places that were, you know, in their memories and things like that. But yeah, thank you all. If you have, you know, things that you want to add, questions for each other, if Gabby has any questions. If there are no immediate questions, may I ask Emma to say something about, you know, the indispensable pieces of wisdom that one person that is creating a new article on Wikipedia should bear in mind, you know, things like relevance and
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably quite helpful if I share my screen again, so I can take you to the project page and give you some advice on that. Would that work?
Be great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so okay, can you see that okay?
Yes, thanks.
So if whether or not you're going to get involved as part of the WCC project, then feel free to use the resources on our project page to help you with your editing. I would suggest the first thing you do, if you've not edited Wikipedia before, once you've created your own account, is to look at our project page. And if you go to our Tools and Guides tab, we've basically collected some of the sort of really straightforward resources that Wikipedia produces to give you a hand getting started. I'd recommend taking a look, first of all, at this guide here, which has got really helpful, straightforward details about where to start. And there's also a neat little cheat sheet here if you want to use the code. You don't have to use the code. I'll show you in a minute how to do it without using code, but if you want to start getting to grips with that, if you're not already familiar with it, this would be a good place to start. A couple of other things that we flagged up here are things like particular guidance to consider if you are writing about women, using gender neutral language, and so on and so forth. Wikipedia has specific notability criteria, and we've got a link here to what constitutes a notable subject. Obviously, for our project, we work mainly with biographies and biographies of academics. And for academics, it's relatively easy to work out what makes someone notable. If they are a professor, they pretty much automatically qualify for a page. But as I said, we've got links here to notability and various other pieces of advice. So I would start by having a roam around our page here, where we've collected some of those things together. One thing that is worth saying particularly is the issue about conflict of interest. If you are editing a biography or writing a new biography, then you shouldn't be writing about yourself. You shouldn't be writing about someone with whom you have a close relationship. So, for example, for an academic, it's not the done thing to write about your PhD supervisor or someone who's a close colleague. So do bear in mind those issues to do with conflict of interest, and try and maintain that sort of a suitable distance from the subject to make sure that you kind of remain relatively neutral and you can't be accused of bias or being too close to the subject. In terms of actually getting started with editing, again, if you've not done it before, I would recommend maybe starting by making a few small edits to an existing page, just to kind of get a feel for how it works, rather than starting by diving in and trying to write your own page. So if I can have I got time, Valeria, to quickly show people how to do that? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, please do.
Cool. Okay, so I can do this on our project page. Actually, I noticed that looking at our events and workshops page, there's a little bit of information that's now out of date, and it's this bit here about we keep a running list of events here, and obviously you'll see that this event that's listed as our next event has already happened, so we need to make a change there. So if you have a look, you can either do this by individual section. I'm going to be working with two separate sections here, so I'm going to go to the top of the page and use the edit source button for the whole page. So if you come back to the top of your chosen page and click on edit source, you'll see that first of all you get this view which gives you an image of the page using code, which you can then edit. If you scroll down, you'll see what we've got here. So this is the section that I want to edit, and I basically want to move the past event to the previous event section. So I'm just going to and paste it. And we haven't decided quite yet on the date. We do run sessions roughly monthly, but we haven't quite decided on the date of the next event. So I'm just going to add in here details of next event to be confirmed. Please check updates. And when I've done that, I can hit publish changes up here. It's really useful if you provide a little summary of what you've edited, and I'll show you why that's useful in a moment. So I'm just going to put updated event listing, and I can show a preview if I'm nervous about what that's actually going to look like before I make it go live. That looks fine. So I can go back to publishing my changes by clicking the blue button. And that's now live on Wikipedia. One thing to remember if it's your first time of editing is that you can't break it. Everything's reversible, and so don't kind of worry about messing things up. You can always put things back, or you can ask for help to put things back if you're not sure how to. So don't be nervous about getting stuck in and having a go. If you're not that confident about using the code just yet, there is a way of editing that looks a bit more intuitive. So if we go back to edit source, and if I click here on the pencil tab button here, we get, oh, I can't do it on the project page. Actually, no, I can show you that on a different page. Let me just, if we look, another page that we've created, which is quite a comprehensive page. This is one of the pages created by the project. Miriam Griffin, who some of you might know of as a really well-respected classical scholar, was only mentioned on Wikipedia on her husband's page until WCC Wiki came along. So let's try editing this one. There we go. So if we click on here and click on the visual editing button, we get something that looks basically very similar to the actual page as published. So it's very much a what you see is what you get interface, and you can simply type into this, and that's quite useful. You can't do, it doesn't have quite the functionality of getting into the coding, but if you're just getting started, it's quite a good place to start because it looks very familiar. If you've ever edited a WordPress site or anything like that, then you'll be familiar with how this works. So to go back to our main page, if you click on the View History button, you can see every single edit that's ever been made to a page. So it's very, very clear and transparent who's been working on the pages. And there are ways of undoing things if you think that someone's inserted something that's in error, and restoring earlier versions of pages. There is an etiquette surrounding that. Wikipedia is very hot on keeping an eye on edit wars, which is where people kind of change back pages that changes that other people have made, so that there is a limit to what you can do with that. So I would just say don't get involved in kind of completely reverting other people's edits, because it won't be long before someone comes along and tells you off for that. So that's a quick kind of guide to how to go about making changes. I'm just thinking what would be useful also to have a look at. Okay, what about if we wanted to create, I'm sorry, it's quite noisy, there's a helicopter going over. I'll wait up because it's kind of shaking the room. It's really noisy.
Don't worry, it's not drowning you out.
Is it all right?
It sounds
okay.
louder to you than it does to us.
Fine. All right, it's yeah, probably, okay. Okay, so if you did want to have a go at creating a new page, what I'd recommend doing first is using your sandbox, which you can find up here, which is like a draft page, I guess, where you can create the structure of your page before copying it into a live page. I'll show you what's in mine. This is some material. This is now actually in a live page, as Professor Susan DC does have a Wikipedia page now. And this was the basics of my starting point for putting that page together. So it's a really useful kind of draft place until you build up a little bit of confidence. What I would recommend doing is, if you are editing or if you are creating a new page of your own, find a page elsewhere on Wikipedia that looks really good, that's got really good citations, where the structure is quite comprehensive, and look at how it's structured, and then simply copy and paste the code for that into your sandbox, or the structure from the visual editor if you're using the visual editor, and then use that as the structure for your own page, and that'll save you a lot of time and a lot of kind of fiddling about in the first place, just to see what to actually formulate the structure of the page. Obviously, the more you do of this, the more you get used to how things work, and the more confident you get at putting pages together. So I guess they're my top tips for where to start if you've not done it before. Is there anything else that you think I've missed, Valeria, that would be useful to talk about?
No, I think these are the basics.
Okay.
And yeah, you've done this many more times than I than I did, because
I'm still learning. That's the thing. You never stop learning with Wikipedia. So,
I'm
yeah.
not a strong Wikipedia editor, but I will join the students in creating something
Fantastic. That's great.
for this week. And I would also like to. I have a question for Elisa. Do you have guidelines for creating the content in Easy Travel, for creating the stories? Because you said they had to be, let's say, appealing and clear and simple. But do you have, let's say, a basic structure that you provide, or everything is very free?
I try to leave people free, but not so much. And so we try to have scientific text at the beginning, provided from by the institutions. People worked on the text and re-elaborate them in a more appealing way, in a storytelled, also in a storytelled way, simplifying some concepts or chronologies or pieces of art and so on. They reinterpretate. Normally, they reinterpret the data, the scientific data. But we want to give sure data to people about artworks in Sicily. Yes, there are some rules about that, but people can recreate text and descriptions and so on by themselves. So this is the very first. The very first rule is to use scientific data from the beginning, but let them more comprehensive, more democratic in languages and contents for all the people. Then students or museum curators and so on worked on the CMS. I'm going to describe you the CMS so you can see that is really very simple. Do you see my?
Yes.
Okay. So if you want to create something, for example, you have to need a profile. I can enter with my login. So, for example, this is my CMS, and these are all the profiles I manage in Sicily, and also in Puglia, in Lecce. This is the Museum of Archaeology of the University of Salento in Puglia. This one you can see. So from this CMS, you can do two kinds of things. You can publish, you can realize your museum audio guide. For example, I go here, and you can realize also a tour. Every project with students, with museum curators and so on, was based on how to explain things, how to organize the contents, okay? So there is a brief presentation. This is like a summary of the place, for example, when you welcome people. At the end of the summary, there is always names of people that worked on the project, and always the voices in every sheet is described. And you have to organize your content in section that can be also collections or thematic sections. In this case, are thematic section. And inside every collection there are the single descriptions. And if you want to publish a content, a guide, you have to put the word, everyone. This is normally this is the selection where users can see only with an access code the contents, and you can also control your content if you put correctly your audio's content or your photos or the description inside. This is the museum or a site audio guide. We transformed, for example, also many books that were previously printed in audio guides. Some, in this case, this is one example. This was a book made by the superintendents of Catania, and we decided to use all the figures, all the images in the book, the sections, to prepare an audio guide, a version of the book for children, for example. Instead, if you want to have a tour, this is the archaeological tour of Catania. You have to put inside a tour point of interest. I named it in this way. And you can control everything about this point of interest that is on geolocated on GPS. You can enlarge or not. This is the trigger zone. If you walk with Easy Travel, with the app of Easy Travel, every content published on the map could directly open his voice because of the triggered zone, because it's on GPS. So you can control everything. If you want to upload other contents to a published guide, you can do it as I'm doing, for example. So you can also work on previous projects, and we are working, for example, on other languages, for example. So you can see that here are also are only in Italian language, but if you want to put other languages in the audio guides, we can do it in a very simple way with this section. You can put another language for every content if you want. There is also another important thing, for example, that you can use in other languages, and I will stop. For example, if you want French, you have to put your description translated, but this is an important thing because you can use also direct automatic voices for every language. Many people, men and women, and so on, in every language. From this is all things are free here for the user side and from the content provider side.
I would love to stop you, Elisa, and everyone else, because I think that we are running out of time. But if there is maybe one last question from any of you, otherwise I will just thank you all. Okay.
Thank you, Valeria.
No, thank you, everyone. This was very great session, and thank you for your time, and thank you, everyone that was following this. I'll see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.